Hi. Well, this is going to be my first really and truly proper video where I'm going to be grumpfuttocking about a topic that's really incensed me, and that is the whole issue of cluster bombs, the manufacture and use of cluster bombs on a worldwide basis, and in particular the British government's policy on cluster bombs. Last week, this week actually, on Monday, I got an email from a friend of mine, Colin Bodiam, and he said that he was really teed off and annoyed because he'd read that there was a big conference taking place in Dublin where they were calling for a worldwide treaty banning the use of cluster bombs, and he was really incensed about the fact that the British government didn't have a representative there, even though there were over 100 countries present there. Isn't it interesting that the other countries that weren't there include the US, Israel, China, Russia and the United Kingdom? Unbelievable. I find it wholly unsatisfactory. So, you know, I decided just to have a quick look at what the BBC had to say on the matter, and you know, they obviously reported the conference, and it was very enlightening to find out that Gordon Brown, who in future I'll refer to as Bomber Hovis, don't say Brown, say Hovis, Bomber Hovis is fully in favour of the United Kingdom's policy on cluster bombs. Whilst they abhor the use of cluster bombs in certain circumstances, in being used in civilian areas, for example, they're not wholly opposed to them. They think that they still have battlefield uses, and you know, they also advocate research into smart cluster bombs. These are cluster bombs that will explode and self-detonate after a certain amount of time, a predetermined amount of time. Of course, like all technology, everybody knows about the unexploded bombs that are still live and dangerous from the Second World War and many other wars since. And cluster bombs are you know, no different. And smart cluster bombs will never be 100% safe, and this is what most of the campaigners are saying. So, you know, we see that the biggest producers and stockpilers of cluster weapons, the United States, United Kingdom, China, Russia, India and Israel, are against a total ban. They've been lobbying to have the treaty watered down, and the UK government has shown a commitment to the process, but it's strongly opposed to an outright ban. That's what the BBC are reporting. So if, as expected, the conference comes to an agreement, the BBC said, the most important disarmament treaty since the Ottawa Convention to prohibit landmines over 10 years ago, will be joined by this conference. And don't you think it's disgusting that Gordon Bomber Hovis is not going to be taking the United Kingdom into agreeing with this treaty? Grumpfuttocks, that's all one can say. Grumpfuttocks. Cluster bombs, they should be banned completely, the use of them. I mean, I could tell you a story actually. 2 or 3 years ago we were campaigning against the arms trade in Carmarthen in West Wales, and we decided that in order that the population of Carmarthen could understand what it felt like to be in many of the civilian areas where cluster bombs had been used by the United States in Iraq, we would make some artificial model cluster bombs and lay them in the streets of Carmarthen so people could see what it might be like to come across these unexploded bombs. We phoned the police and told them what we intended to do, and they argued that they'd rather we didn't do it in case there were some real ones left on the street by terrorists, and they wouldn't be able to tell the difference between an artificial one and a real one. And we saw the logic of that argument, and so when we had our next meeting, I put it to everybody that we shouldn't be doing this, and they agreed. However, one of our peace group members had gone out on the morning when we were out collecting signatures against the arms trade, and had made a number of artificial cluster bombs out of cans of beans, and had written on them Army Ordnance Cluster Bomb with a number that he'd picked up from the website. He'd painted the cans and put some cardboard fins on them. Anybody could see what they were. They were just obviously painted tin cans with bits of cardboard stuck on the side, and he'd placed them in a few places around in Carmarthen. When he turned up while we were collecting signatures, I immediately told him to go and collect them back again, which he did. But he's a bit absent-minded and forgetful because he's, getting quite old. He was approaching 70, and he'd forgotten where he'd left 2 of them, but he brought the other 10 or 12 back again. Anyway, we continued collecting signatures, collected 365 signatures against the arms trade on that day, and held a lucky dip with the other cluster bombs that we'd been able to make. We put them into a lucky dip barrel with some prizes, and people were able to have a lucky dip and chance their arm and see whether they'd won a prize or not. Anyway, that all went swimmingly well. Anyway, the next morning, after we'd all gone home, this was a Sunday morning, a street cleaner found one of the missing artificial cluster bombs in the street in Carmarthen, phoned the police, and the police on duty said, yeah, that's okay, we know what that's all about, just put it in the bin and forget about it, which he did. An hour later, a cleaner was going into an office block, and she found the other one in the doorway of this office building. She phoned the police. Meanwhile, the police had changed shifts, and there was a new person on the switchboard. What happened was that because they'd changed shifts, they didn't know anything about the fact that we'd been in contact with them, and so they told the cleaner to leave it where it was, and they instituted a full-scale alert. They closed down the whole of the centre of Carmarthen, closed all the shopping centre, ringed off all the shops, and then the next thing they sent for the bomb squad from Wiltshire, who duly came down, and to cut a long story short, they carried out a controlled explosion on a can of beans. Well, this was absolutely amazing, and we eventually managed to get some publicity from this in the Western Mail and 1 or 2 other minor magazines. Anyway, that's it. It was incredible. Grumpfuttocks to cluster bombs. I've got to answer the phone. Bye.